Arguably one of the best decades for automotive diversity, the 1990s saw volumes of iconic Japanese performance cars hit the market. Well known for the Lancer Evolution, one car that often flies under the radar is the Mitsubishi GTO, or 3000 GT as it was badged in Australia. A twin turbocharged V6, conservatively rated at around 280 horsepower and combined with all-wheel drive and four-wheel steering, this Grand Tourer was an expensive proposition at time of release. These days, however, they have become quite affordable. We caught up with Ernie and Sharon, two passionate Aussie Mitsubishi owners, for their thoughts on these often misunderstood cars.
There's a guy on the Facebook page that I don't know how the hell he got them, but
My blue's probably a little bit dark, unfortunately, but yeah.
I didn't realise they were different. I thought you had the same shirt on.
no.
No, oh come on, this is just this is pink.
No, it's not pink at all, darling.
Mine's
it's not
beautiful
pink at
blue,
all.
hot and cool at the same time.
I noticed there's a bit of rivalry between you two. Just a little bit.
A little bit.
Yeah.
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 It's usually a red and blue thing, isn't it?
Yeah. How many years between these two?
Mine's a 1997.
97, and
Yep.
this is what?
Mine was built in '93.
So it's an older one.
But is that the last or the second one?
No,
There's three of them, isn't there?
third gen.
Third
yeah,
gen.
which is, what was that, 2000?
There's actually four.
Oh, is there?
So that's a first gen. The second gen effectively had the same front as the blue, but the same spoiler as mine. Then what they called the 2.5 gen, which had the hoop spoiler, and then the third gen, they changed the front and had the combat wing as well on it.
So how many were sold in Australia?
117.
But what? Only this model?
Yes.
Only this shape? So all these were imports?
Sorry,
today?
that's not quite true. There was a second gen, very few of them.
Through Mitsubishi here though?
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. So mine's an Australian delivered one, and it was only 117 sold. The basic difference was it didn't have the active aero and the active exhaust.
Oh, we didn't get all the exotic bits on
No,
it.
no. When they landed here, they were over $100,000.
Yeah.
So I'm sure Mitsubishi did everything they could to try to get the price down.
Yeah.
So we missed out on those couple of goodies.
You can still see in the cabin where it's got the button for the. I've noticed because we hopped in Barry's one. Yeah.
Still got it all.
Yeah.
But Geordie, they're sensational cars.
Yeah.
We just think, particularly as a second-hand car, for the price, I just don't think you could match the performance,
they're totally
the style,
undervalued,
the
aren't
comfort.
And underrated.
They're fantastic cars.
Totally underrated.
How did you find out about this?
I was down in Sandown. I was racing down there at the time, and there was a guy going around in a car. I didn't know what it was. It was red. It sounded really good, and it was going around everything. And I just, wow, you know. So as soon as he come around to the back of the pits, I went down and talked to him, and he told me all about it and that, and I just started drawling. And he said, by the way, I've got a blue one at home for sale. And I wish, but had plenty of cars at the time, so I didn't worry about it. But about 12 months later, I saw it on car sales. And I thought, I've got to go and have a look. I just got to. So went down there, and as soon as I stepped in that garage, it was mine. It was just going to be mine. It was just beautiful.
So when you first saw it at Sandown, did you know it was Mitsubishi?
No.
You had no idea what did you think it was? You thought it was like European or something? Or?
I knew, I didn't know what it was, and for everything that I knew, it didn't look quite right, so it was a real puzzle. So, and I've loved it ever since.
I wanted to buy a weekend car, and I collect all the old Wheels, Modern Motor magazines, and thought, look, I want 90s, I want Japanese reliability, I want something with a bit of credibility that had some oomph, and started reading, and there was the Supras, the RX-7s, and they started comparing with that. And the most common thread in the magazines, it goes terrific, it's a supercar, but it's got all those gizmos that sort of takes the fun out of driving, and they're just incredibly safe. And the word was incredibly safe, bland car.
Yeah.
And I'm looking at it thinking, it doesn't look bland to me.
No.
And I wanted a car that was incredibly safe. I'm just a normal driver, and if this thing saved my life, I was quite happy with that. So that's when I started looking.
I love the real 90s pop-up light.
Absolutely.
There's a few cars that have that style, similar style.
Yep.
I mean, I always think this is a little bit like an early Eagle Talon in the States.
Yes.
And still, I think, the best looking Talon out of all.
Yep. And what I like about the first gens, and I love them all. I love Sharon's, I love them all. that was the original designer's intent.
Yeah.
Subsequently, a lot of countries legislated no more pop-up headlamps, so they had to get rid of that. They sort of got bagged a bit from the side streets, people saying, oh, you're trying to be a Testarossa. So they changed it. But that was the original designer's intent, and I just love it with a passion.
I think the only thing, a negative, is really the weight that everyone...
Look, it is, and yet...
It doesn't feel as heavy as it looks.
No,
it reads on paper, does it?
Absolutely, and if you look at the performance figures, you think, well, it must be a hell of a good engine, because it's got all that weight it's dragging around.
Torquey,
they still go.
I love the torque.
Yep.
It just pulls.
Yep.
The twin turbo, there's no lag in it, and it doesn't matter what gear you're in, it'll just pull.
Third gear will do 160 k's.
Yeah.
They're just... So, yes, they're heavy, but I can tell you they handle.
So is a Super and so is a
Yes,
GTO.
yes.
They're not like they're just a bit heavier. They're like It's not like they're comparing to cars that are 300-400 kilos, and there's a huge difference.
And look, it's a four-wheel drive. And you know, sometimes you go on forums, people say, oh, they're so heavy. And I sort of say, so what would you take out of it?
Yeah.
You know, what would you remove to make it lighter? Because I don't know.
Are they steel bonnet?
Yes, There's
so you could actually get a lighter bonnet.
Yeah.
But would it really save that much overall?
I know, but who had aluminium bonnets back in the 90s? Did a few?
a few did, but
well, yes, there was that. Yeah.
but they were like, I think some of the early Genevos did, the later Evo 3s, but they were specifically designed to go rallying.
Yeah.
Like they were designed for one thing. This is a very different kind of car.
And that's what everyone's got to remember. They are a Grand Tourer.
Tourer, yeah.
Yes.
And for a Grand Tourer, they go damn good.
Yeah.
You know?
And look, Mitsubishi built it as a showcase car. They wanted to showcase their technology, and stuff like the electronic suspension, the active aero ones, the ones that were built for overseas markets, they were just an incredibly advanced car at their time.
Yeah.
Just, it's been great. We love it with a passion. And that's how I met my girlfriend.
And that's more or less like we go out practically every single weekend. The two of us, we take our own cars, we go out with our radios and go for a drive, and look, they're just, every time you hop in them, you think, wow, this is mine. Every time you walk away from them, you walk away and you think, that's mine. We're building a house, and we have had to have a bedroom just for our GTO collection.
How often do you get them out?
Every weekend.
Every weekend,
We find a bit of country road, and we're both a bit into photography, so we have fun with the car. We find somewhere nice, take photos, drive home with a big smile on our face.
Yeah, that's cool.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's good to see them out. Too many are in garages. We
don't get it.
I reckon I'd go 1 or 2 years without seeing these on the road.
Yeah.
Easily. Yes. There's a couple of people we know, and one guy won't take it out in the wet. He's waiting for them to be worth $100,000. He's probably going to wait a while, I think. And we think, mate, you're missing out on just one of the great.
It'd be too hard to drive it.
Yeah.
Taking that attitude.
Yeah.
But I think one of the good parts about them too is because there's not a great deal of them. The people that have got them, really, we've got a real family. Like it's just so supportive. You know, everyone, we get together once a year and go for a drive. It could be wherever, but it's all organised, and we all head off for sort of 4 or 5 days. Have a ball. Absolutely have a ball. All we do is just drive and talk cars.
Yep. A lot of fun. A lot of fun.
Need to get one.
Keen to drive another example, good friend and devoted Mitsubishi 4G enthusiast Baz gave us the keys to his own import GTO.
That's another project. This will be converted with a 4G63, so this will be all-wheel drive 4G63 GTO. They do it in America. I've got some mounts for it already, so it'll be good to build one of these, because I think it's got good aero, like, you know, nice package, nice wide, low, looks good.
Yeah, they're a nice looking
bit heavy, bit big, but I think with the weight reduction in engine, so, you know, going from a V6 to a 4, and then cutting back from twin turbo to single turbo and all that sort of stuff, I think.
Is this a glass roof? What's this?
Yeah.
The whole thing?
Yeah, that's right. It just tilts.
Oh, it's pretty cool though.
Out of the GTOs, from my understanding, or 3000 GTs, number 1 is a 6G72, number 2 is a 4G63.
So for those that don't know, they're a 3 litre?
6G72 is a 3 litre V6, yeah.
And is it true they've got, is that basically a Magna engine?
Yeah, they
Not the heads, but is the block
share
related, or?
they share the same parts. So Pajeros,
Yeah.
you know, Pajeros, I think they're a 3.5 litre, but there's whole similar to the 4G63 that there are so many variations.
Yeah.
But fundamentally they're the same design.
Yeah.
You know, I'll show you this
What
one.
about
here.
this one? This one looks a bit cleaner.
Yeah, so this one's a 97 model. So this is known as the second gen. The first gens are like this, pop-up lights.
Is there any engine differences on the Series 2?
My knowledge, 4-bolt mains as opposed to 2 bolts.
Yep.
So they're known to be stronger.
And they run TDO 4 turbos, aren't
That's
they?
right, yeah.
So a common upgrade is actually Evo or just the
TDO 5s,
yeah.
or high flow TDO 4s.
Because TDO 5s, I guess, aren't really worth that much, so you could easily pick up 2 of them.
The only problem is the space you have. So
Yeah.
you can see there's
no space.
You haven't got much space here. That
To work on. Jordy
back
said you
area.
pulled the engine out to service it.
Well, this thing, I actually purchased this car with a broken transmission, and I spent, you know, about 6 months. I pulled it out with my dad. We did all the timing belt seals, similar to what, you know, I did on your engine. Just
Yeah.
really looked after the timing side and the gearbox side. In this case, all the main seals, etc.
What was wrong with the gearbox?
It ran dry, so
Oh, okay.
so the guy, you know, being his daily, he probably just let it run with an oil leak, and over
Yeah.
time it just seized and he couldn't drive it. And when I went to inspect it, couldn't even start the thing because it potentially, I think it locked in 2 gears, and the crank couldn't even turn over. So to actually fire it up, you know, you got to step on the clutch, fire it up, and it fired up and it idled well. As soon as you chuck it in neutral, lift your foot off, it was stuck in again. It would just stall. So
yeah.
I knew it was a gearbox problem, and yeah, gearbox basically fixed it up. Drives really well, actually. I've always wanted one of these cars.
Yeah.
You know, growing up, it's almost like far out GTO.
You hardly ever see them.
Take for a drive, and you know, we had it on the dyno a couple of weeks ago.
This is pretty much standard, isn't it? Just an exhaust.
Just an exhaust. These blue radiator hoses, as you can see. I couldn't find black ones. So that's really it. Exhaust and silicone hoses in the wheels. The rest of it's factory. You know, as factory as it gets. Even boost, it's 8 psi.
What power did you say it made?
It made close to 190 kilowatts at 4 wheels. So.
And that's the 208 engine power.
I
Back in
think
the day.
they actually rated it at 320 horsepower.
Horsepower.
Yeah. That's what I've found on the internet, but I don't know what the brochures actually
Which is
said.
what? That's probably 230, 240 kilowatt, is it? This is one car I've never been in, or obviously driven, is a Mitsubishi 3000 GT. Now these, you hardly ever see these on the road.
In Australia.
Yeah, and apparently they're quite a cult following in the States. Now, this is like such an underrated car of its era. These are very undervalued. You can pick these cars up for
Under 20.
under $20,000. You're never going to pick up, say, an R32 for that. And on paper, I mean, these are an all-wheel drive V6 twin turbo, 4-wheel steer. They even had things like, not on this model, the earlier model you saw in the car park there was, they even had a actuator exhaust. You can actually see the old switch down there from the old model. You can make it quiet or loud. Being, this is a Japanese import, this isn't an Australian model, it's got the Japanese speed limited speedo, so it only goes to 180 kilometres an hour, which is
just the dials in general look extremely easy to read, don't they?
I must admit, Barry's right, even for a V6, the exhaust note isn't too bad for a V6.
And on 8 pounds of boost, it goes quite well.
Yeah, 8 pound boost, it's, you know, this is about really as slow as the car will ever go when you think about it. It's, as you said, it's a stock car. You can see they were pretty underrated at the time. All these Japanese cars labelled at, what was it, 206 kilowatts, 280 horsepower, whatever they were rated at. Cars definitely got more than 280 horsepower. Yeah, geez, for 8 pounds, it goes, it's pretty good. You can see the tuning potential in this car would be huge. And actually, for a heavy car, we didn't say earlier, this is the one of the major downfalls of this car at the time was a heavyweight. I think we'd have to look it up. I think this is over 1,700 kilos or around that weight standard, which was realistically probably 150 kilos too heavy.
It's interesting because from the outside they don't look that big,
No, but being in it now, it is quite a big car. Yeah, and look, it doesn't actually fit. It feels solidly planted on the road. It doesn't certainly feel like some heavyweight barge if you looked at the stats and went. Because realistically, to be perfectly honest, I've been in quite a few GTRs, and it just feels very similar to driving a GTR. And a Supra's not a small car. You go in them, you know, you think, oh, that's heavy, but most things from the 90s JDM, they generally handle pretty well. So now I'm going to give the keys to you, and you can have a drive of this Mitsubishi. You said it was pretty hard to get in, and I thought, imagine if there was a car next to you, how much room you'd have to get in. Let's give it a go. It's a bit tight. It is. You wouldn't want to be a fat bastard. Fire it up. There's not a whole lot of headroom. Imagine trying to drive this with a helmet on. Oh, you'd be stuffed. So that you get this classic 90s climate control. This is actually very similar to the optional, or the climate control you can get in the early Evo Lancers. I can tell you the aircon works mint. Jordo, you said there was no water temp gauge. It's right there next to the boost gauge. Is that it? Yep. We just realised the 20-inch rims probably don't help the ride, but yeah. So the brakes actually aren't that small. It's just these rims are so big they make them look like the world's biggest steering wheel, or what? It's like a VN Commodore. What do you think of this big old 90s sports car? It's a bit of a GT cruiser though, isn't it? Yeah, it's a cruiser, but it makes a nice bit of torque. I mean, that's coming from someone who drives probably the most gutless, I should say, well, no torque engine coming from a Subaru owner. Anything's going to feel better. Yeah, I don't know how you'd go like me. I wouldn't be able to drive this with a helmet without putting the seat, without lying down, you know. Overall, it's a lot of car for the money when you're talking GTRs. These are very underrated and realistically undervalued. If you're in the market for something like a Skyline, but then again, a Skyline's got a lot more prestige than a 3000 GT really in terms of like racing heritage, internet popularity and racing heritage and all the rest of it. But if you're after a car like that and you can't afford one, you'd be silly not to look at one of these. I've seen a couple at the track, and from what I've heard, they respond really well if you just want a cheap sort of track toy. We've seen a few at the circuit, and the owners have raved about them, who have actually ex-GTR owners, and said they're actually very good circuit cars.